Good morning, folks. How are y'all doing out there in radio land? Pretty good, hopefully. Just decided to come to live this morning and talk a little politics, administration, a little, politics.
Clashing with Democrats on Capitol over a fake name.
Great offense to
Treasury Secretary clashing with Democrats on Capitol, especially over a specific name.
I did not mortgage during or prior to mortgage. So I grade us to anybody who made the foreclosure king.
Democrats bestowed that title on Mnuchin during an examination, accusing him of a financial crisis while he ran their One West lender, by the way, that the company that became a bunch of mortgages. The hearing got heated, and Keith up infamous improper foreclosure practices.
I don't even think you know the definition of robo.
What I know,
there's not a legal definition of robo.
It was one of several testy moments, exchanges at the House Financial Services Committee, demonstrating increasing frustrations in the administration, with Mnuchin saying this when asked if he would guide.
And I'm not apologizing to this robo thing. I'm not a legal firm, and I was being asked.
You guys for not providing records of Russia and the clearly in that
session. For the first time, President Trump targeting him with a burden of criticism. The Attorney General standing by his decision to rid himself. Investigation. Relentless battering from his boss, sting.
Well, it's kind of hard, but the United States is a. He has had a lot of criticisms, and he's steadfastly determined to get his job. He wants all of our jobs.
I said again and again, and maybe you should have acted different, not yourself.
The experts, Department of Justice people, trained in that. I'm confident of the right decision.
He said their core values are in harmony. Sessions said he believes the Justice Department is making tremendous progress, but he acknowledges he serves at the pleasure of the president and will step down. Boss wants to make a change. But Senator Lindsey Graham cautioning the president there will be holy hell to pay if he fires the Attorney General.
Holy hell.
Russia bordering the U.S.
Anyways, I'm glad Sessions finally spoke out. There's been a lot of bullshit on both. Excuse my language, but yeah, there've been a lot of people saying that Trump went a little too far by throwing off on Sessions too. Sessions didn't speak up for himself enough and blah blah blah. You know, grown men, and I'm pretty sure that they've both been criticized at least once in their lifetime, so probably through all this. Right here's a big piece of news I wanted to go over this morning. Get rid of some of these windows here. Warfoot Force unleashes supersonic bombing and Korea nuke drill as it's claimed Donald Trump is poised to launch military strikes on Oak State. Nuclear-capable B-1 bombers were escorted by South Korean fighters over the peninsula. The Sun.co.k. Good video. Low. Watched it.
Of U.S. in Korea to B-1 flying over the Korean Peninsula on Friday, day after latest ballistic missile test used similar tactics in the past in response to questions, but particular sense of after North Korea Saturday, just one day the North's latest ballistic missile test. The U.S. has used similar tactics in the past in response to Pyongyang Russians, but a particular sense of urgency after North Korea's late-night launch on Friday. Experts indicating the North's missile range has increased since its first earlier this month. They say the weapon could now potentially hit Los Angeles and go. U.S. President Donald Trump turning to China in his frustration, a pair of tweets saying he's very disappointed in the country and had done nothing to the U.S. and North Korea. The list of states and allies says it opposes the launches. All parties act with caution to prevent tension from escalating, but U.S. Air Force officials are prepared for the worst, saying their troops are ready to respond with rapid, lethal, and force if the time comes.
I'm up for Korea. I know it's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. But there is going to be military in North Korea. My puppies are fighting this morning. You have to look over that. Excuse me. Quit that. Anyways, reaction. I can get that. We're gonna stop missiles. We're not gonna stop. Make them stop. So it's gonna happen very soon. I just don't know when. I just dread to see conflict after the war we just recently got out of. We even call it that. This video's about. We don't want to watch that. Moving on along. Trump makes about Russia, despite criticism that his relationship with Russia is too cozy. President Trump signaled that he will sign legislation that will place additional sanctions on Russia. Has confirmed on using tougher sanctions on Russia for their interference in the 2016 presidential election. The measure also requires Trump to seek approval from Congress before lifting or easing the economic penalties against Moscow. The White House supports the measure. Newly appointed White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders noted on Friday that the administration is supportive of being tough on Russia and, quote, particularly putting these sanctions in. President Donald J. Trump read early drafts on the bill and negotiated regarding critical elements of it. He has now reviewed the final version and, based on its responsiveness to his negotiations, approves the bill and intends to sign it. The House overwhelmingly voted to pass the bill 419 to 3, and the Senate followed suit with 98 to 2 vote. The large margins ensured that Congress would be able to override any potential veto from the president. The legislation, which also punishes Iran and North Korea, will place additional financial sanctions on Moscow for using military aggression in Ukraine and Syria. Democrats losing talking points. While Democrats have peddled and will more than continue to do that Trump colluded with the Russians in the 2016 election, the signing of the legislation is another major blow to their narrative. More importantly, this piece of legislation is nonpartisan. It seeks to take the decisive action in its order to ensure the safety of the American people. Outside of penalizing Russia, the sanctions will also hammer the crippled economy of North Korea after they test-fired a second intercontinental ballistic missile on Friday, which flew longer and higher than its first ICBM launched earlier this month. Experts have determined that the missile has the capability to reach Alaska. Big move for Trump. On Saturday, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said the near unanimous votes for both Chamber of Congress represent the strong will of the American people to see Russia take steps to with the United States, end quote. Signing the measure can be seen as a big win for Trump's young presidency. The jury he is superior Russia and continues strong policies Trump has already showcased in India, despite resenting any substantial progress in healthcare. Trump's hostile actors shows his leadership and his willingness to keep American people safe. I don't know, conservative.org. I think it might be Gage Skidmore. I'm not sure, really know. Man, who wrote this? What to say? But anyways, you see how their narrative looks like when you look at it from both point of views. Like it makes total nonsense whatsoever. Like it would be so hard with these financial sanctions if he colluded with them. Another thing, I watched a video this morning of some guy that was testifying about the ICA collusion thing. Hang on, I'll find it. I'll give you his name right here. It's a pretty long video. It lasted about an hour and a half. And no, you can just it's got more holes in it than Swiss cheese. I mean, the whole thing just doesn't make any sense. And if they go on and keep on. That's it. whoever Browder is. Testimony on Putin's corruption and meddling. Justice Department officials testify on foreign agent registration requirement. Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on foreign agent registration requirements. I don't know who that guy is. I'll find out though. Hey! Just quit. Bill. Whoever Bill. William is executive officer of investment Hermitage Capital Management, and at one was portfolio and in his testimony he makes the outlandish claim that Putin is the real man in the world secretly, which he has several hundreds of bank accounts worldwide. Greg Holden, and he has used his political power how you say it, extort, I guess you would, money from these people in Russia. According to him, there's like, I don't know, 4 or 5 really rich people in Russia. He pretty much used a month, like whatever called, were like the CIA. People puts them in all sale with no lights and comes in the middle of the night and makes them change cells and makes them lay on the wet floor and all this stuff just to soften them up. And the ones that he does do like that, he uses as an example for the rest of the rich people. Here's a video from CNN.com. I hope it's just a highlight video. We'll try to watch some of it. It's not too long. I do plan to make a highlight video of this to share with y'all, but I haven't had time to do it yet. So we'll just check this little article out here. See if they did the hard work for me or not. Here's one. So that's it. Sure like to watch that video. Here we go. Finally, it lights loading, I think.
Bill Browder, longtime Russian critic. I've seen him last night. Today, he testified before the Senate. He spoke about the crucial meeting between Donald Jr. and the Russian.
Not that.
This was a big ask, to go and ask the possible future President of the United States to repeal a major piece of human rights legislation. Have gone in and said, can you repeal this for us without having something to return?
And out front now, Bill Browder. Now, Bill, today you talked a lot about the meeting between Donald Trump Jr. and the Russian lawyer in your testimony. You spoke a lot about very powerful, very wealthy Russians who would have had interest in this meeting.
Well, it turns out the number one, the Russian, which is Vladimir, is wealthy as the world with $2 billion. Vladimir Putin is so, based on our somebody who bid from the Sergei Magnitsky and was killed over and more subject to the act. And so Vladimir Putin's own money that he holds in the West could potentially be frozen. And then we go down to Vladimir Putin, and there's many other oligarchs who have a lot of money in the West who are involved in all sorts of terrible things in Russia.
So obviously they would all have a lot at stake with the that are under discussion here. Today, you were very clear that Russian intelligence knew about.
Well, I can tell you with 100% certainty that the Russian intelligence services would have been aware of that meeting in advance as they were plotting it out. They would have.
This is slow.
Money he holds potentially Vladimir Putin, and there's many other oligarchs in the West who are in sorts of terrible things in Russia.
So obviously they would have a lot at stake with the sanctions that are under discussion here. Very clear that Russian intelligence knew of the meeting.
I can tell you with 100% that the intelligence would have been aware of the meeting as they were planned out. They would have been spent studying how to the results in that.
Now, Bill, you've also told a lawyer without doubt working on behalf of the government. Do you think it was a follow-up to this meeting or even more meetings?
I don't know whether there will be follow-ups. I don't know whether any of the offers they made accepted, but I can guarantee you that this was something that was discussed at an extremely high level in Russia before and after.
So, you know, everyone in the meeting, Donald Trump Jr. has said, look, it was a waste of my time. It was 20 minutes I could get back. The response we've heard from the president as well as his son is that the meeting adoption of Russian children. Here they are.
It was sort of nonsense. And quickly went on to, Russian adoption, how we could possibly help.
I guess they talked about, they talked about adoption and something. Adoption wasn't part of the campaign.
There was nothing that, as far as I know, that would lead, I believe, that there was anything except for discussion from the Magin.
You made very clear in today's hearing that you do not believe they about the adoption of children.
That's correct. Whenever anyone mentions adoption in the Russians, they're talking about Magnitsky sanctions for Russian torturers and murderers. Adoption is effectively a code word. Basically what happened was that sanctions were put in place. Vladimir Putin got so mad that he then banned the adoption of orphans by American families. There is no talk about adoption. It's about allowing Russian torturers and murderers to freely earn their money and do U.S.
You know, Donald Trump himself spoke to Vladimir Putin, of course, as we know, at the G20. And closed conversation that they had, we now know about it. Donald Trump spoke to the New York Times and says that this meeting with Vladimir Putin was also about adoption. Here he is.
Actually, it was very interesting. We talked about adoption. You did? Russian adoption, yeah. I found that interesting because he ended that years ago. And I actually talked about Russian adoption with him, which is interesting because that was a part of the conversation that Don had.
Does the president not know adoption is a code word? Russian sanctions and the Magnitsky Act to Vladimir Putin, or what?
I knows or he doesn't know, but I guarantee you that Vladimir Putin wasn't talking about adoption. He was talking about repealing this piece of legislation, which is the single largest policy priority he has. He hates the Magnitsky Act, and if he get to adoptions, the main purpose of this conversation was this sanctions legislation repeal.
So he weighed in on this today, taking questions from the press. President was asked to be engaged in a Russian meddling in the United States and possible new sanctions. Of course, the Congress it seems eager to impose. And here's what he said about the whole situation.
We see merely a growth of anti-Russian hysteria and utilization of Russophobia for domestic.
Russian hysteria and Russophobia?
When during testimony said that guaranteed that didn't know Vladimir Putin was referring to repealing this legislation and was referring to adoption, by the way.
Answer anytime he gets doing anything. He blames it on the West and tries this image in Russia. You can tell his people around. Everybody says, I'm here, I'm going to stand up to them. When in fact it's all about stealing money, people, killing people, and then hide.
All right. Thank you very much, Bill Browder. I appreciate your time. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
I am going to do some more research into this outer character. I'm not aware of who he is until today, actually. But all that testimony and related to things, I watched it, and I would recommend anybody else watch it. I don't know, well, I wouldn't recommend that you not watch it. It was pretty interesting. That's just if you been following this whole Russia stupid stuff, whatever. Saw an article Institute this morning saying something about Hillary was in big trouble, so I had to share this. But anyway, I'll give it a second to load. I'll go ahead and read these Bible verses. James 5:14. Is anyone among you sick? Let them call the elders of the church and pray over them and anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord. Jeremiah 17:14. Heal me, Lord, and I will be healed. Save me, and I will be saved. For you are the one I praise. Psalms 32 says, Lord my God, I call to you for help, and you healed me. See if I can find another good one here. Isaiah 25:7-8. On this he will destroy the shroud and pose people. The ship covers all nations. He will ever the sovereign Lord will sweep away from places, have removed people's disgrace from all the earth. The Lord has spoken. Okay. Again, I'm not saying who wrote this article, but it's from the Conservative Institute. Breaking and in major trouble. 29/17. Media is focused on special counsel Robert Mueller, who's the gating Trump selection. One of the House Republicans may authorize a special. About 2 dozen Republican publicity. Let me start over. About 2 dozen Republicans have publicly asked the Justice Department to name a special counsel in order to investigate both the administration and Hillary Clinton. The letter signed by House Judiciary Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte, Republican from Virginia, significantly names Clinton, former FBI Director James Comey, and former Attorney General Loretta Lynch. Crimes in question. The letter to Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein highlights at least 14 alleged crimes of, quote, matters, end quote, that House Republicans wanted investigated. The list includes the possible influence of the Ukrainian government on the Clinton campaign, Lynch's alleged obstruction of the investigation of Clinton, and James Comey's role in the leak of crucial memos. Another possible allegation includes the Clinton Foundation's involvement with the Russian government. Significantly, they are alleged that the Clinton Foundation received $1.35 million from Russia for the sale of 1/5 of America's uranium supply. Thank you, Lord. Obama included, ? Although he is not named in the letter, there is a possibility that former President Barack Obama will be investigated by his proposed second counsel. The crime that the council may investigate is the Obama administration's illegal surveillance of American citizens. According to some sources, the Obama administration not only used the NSA's to illegally spy on Americans, but also collected electronic data without first getting a judge's warrant. An investigation into this matter could easily transition into an investigation into Obama's role in Susan Rice's alleged campaign of political espionage against the Trump team in 2016. Is it possible? Currently, the Trump administration has declared war on Special Counsel Robert Mueller. President Trump and his surrogates have criticized that Mueller for leading an expensive, quote, witch hunt based on flimsy evidence. It's a criticism that is almost guaranteed to be mimicked by Democrats should Clinton become the target of a special counsel. However, despite a fairly large base of potential evidence, including former Obama officials and Hillary Clinton, there is no guarantee that a second counsel will be created. The move by congressional Republicans is the first step in what could prove to be a long journey into the bowels of the corrupt Clinton machine. I put this on the rebel.media. How Obama committed the biggest theft in history. I think this is about this, I'm not sure. Yes. Of confessions we discussed Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac money to keep them afloat, and that they would receive a dividend return. But that wasn't enough, so they took all profits and wiped out the shareholders. Michael considers the largest theft in history, the values at $100 billion.
What I want to talk about today is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. It looks to me like a Fidel Castro revolution grab where the government just took a mortgage, screwed over all the investors, said, you say theft, history of the planet Earth.
It likely is the biggest theft in history. Whether the number is 80 billion or 130 billion, it's probably around $100 billion.
Stole a golden goose. No final number.
What happened was they passed a law, Economic Recovery Act, that said had to give some money, 80 billion. It was only designed as a tack on their feet, and then to continue on. Administration officials and Treasury said 8% dividend from this money. Why don't we take profits? And kept them basically wiped again. Guys like Hayes, but they kept, which, you know, even mob loans will give you 30% interest, but they're not going to stay in the business.
Well, it's very profitable. So I bet a lot. I saw them at the. And Obama just severed,
including one of the value investors out there, was Berkeley, very large stake, knowing that, hey, I could read the numbers and return to profitability, make money. It's a great investment, and he got out. And he's been shouting his credit from these companies were government in unlawful act. Documents have been released that the Obama administration executive privilege on that show clearly internal conversations where they knew they were going to return to profitability, and they came up with an alternative excuse to seize them, saying we had to protect shareholders and not shareholders, we had to protect the taxpayers. But then the documents make very clear they knew that wasn't the reason. The reason was they wanted to keep all the money. So,
well, it sounds like an obvious case of fraud because the way they sold it to the public was, I'm just going to loan these guys money, and then we'll be even after they pay it back, and that's what we do. We're a loan company. and then they did something over permanently.
Yeah, and it's clear that that's what they did. And not only that, so that's on itself, testified under oath, that's not the reason they did it, to protect taxpayers. They perjured themselves. It's clear. So indicted or investigated for this. Again, we talked earlier, if it was a different ethical bent, page of every newspaper, front page of, and it's descending now on, these media for 30 grand.
Yeah, they literally with
that. I did wrongfully prosecuted on merit team, but 100 billion, hey.
Well, the media is so inept that I doubt this story will get like, call me old-fashioned, but if there's evidence of the largest theft in the history of mankind, it should maybe garner a little bit ink. Checking out that video, I do a show that you gotta pay for, subscribe to. It's called How's It Going? And talk to interesting, serious, and educational, and political, and smart. You can subscribe by clicking here.
Yeah. Articles also from Rebel.net. It's written by Holly Nicholas. Immigration system standard. Or quickly the fight against immigrants actually share Canadian values.
A new story out of Manitoba, the perfect Canada's refugee and immigration policies discriminate against economic immigrants, share our Canadian views. Family are Colorado, business in that province over 5 years ago, and are being denied permanent residency over their daughter's disability. That denial may also extend to the little girl visiting the country, and the letter advised against her entering the country without seeking advice from a Canadian visa office. They face being kicked out within a few months, with the decision being final, while our globalist government puts out the message that everyone is welcome, and illegals are actually walking across the United States border toward Justin Trudeau's welcome wagon filled with government welfare goodies. That should be the first red flag. This is discriminatory and hypocritical, especially coming from a government that apparently champions the disabled and minorities. How scummy to put that on a child's shoulders. She's just 6 years old. Can you even imagine? Trust me, this story is going to grind your gears. It's going to infuriate you. The family business, Harvest Lodge, services hunters and anglers, employs 4 people seasonally, and the couple have sunk hundreds of thousands of dollars into it. They're very active in their community, at their church, and their daughter's school, so not only are they contributing to the Canadian economy, but they also contribute to the social framework of their small town of Waterhen. Being there for over 5 years and living in the community, population of 169, there's no doubt that this family is entirely integrated into everyday life there. They seem like a lovely couple, people that anyone would be happy to have as friends and neighbors. So things were great until the Warkentin's daughter was diagnosed with epilepsy that delayed her speech and development over a year after they bought their business. And the reason the government is denying the family's request is because they say their daughter will cause what they call excessive demand, which is defined as totaling over $6,655 per year on either the education or healthcare systems and other social programs.
So let's compare this to the excessive demand that Trudeau's newly arrived Syrian refugees put on the system, shall we? It costs $384 million to settle 25,000 refugees. That's over 15 grand. Count for private scholarships and those that came in under the blend program. So that's more than 2 times the excessive demand that the Workentons are being exiled for, while Trudeau ships in thousands of more Syrian refugees. And Association of Immigrant Serving Agencies that Syrians in Alberta have an 8% employment rate after between 8 to 11 months. Only 22% of those refugees can speak English at that amount of time. And according to those same stats, the majority of Syrians that have come to the province have at highest a grade 9 education. So most of the time you kind of need a high school diploma or equivalent to get a grown-up job here in Canada and take care of your family. So who do you think is going to pay for that upgrade? I'd say that's excessive demand on top of the excessive demand, but according to the government, that's just not so. Apparently that rule only applies to little kids with disabilities. At this time, the Workenton's daughter is no longer on medication because she hasn't had a seizure in 2 years. Thank God. And to add to this, Global News uncovered the fact that Immigration Canada has the wrong information on file. A report from the school psychologist stated that it's just a possibility that the child may have ADHD, but the government file stated that definitively does. The government says that they're turning the Workens away and it's a final decision because of their daughter's disability, but really, they're just not the right kind of immigrants from the right kind of country. You know, the ones that Justin Trudeau can use for photo ops when tragedy strikes and he can put the Disney Prince persona on. The bottom line is that the Canadian government actively discriminates against immigrants that come here and help Canada prosper, and ships refugees that come with a lot of baggage, and I don't mean luggage, that are a huge burden on the taxpayer to resettle. Look, I don't deny the crisis in Syria, but I've said before that I think the solution for Syrians is in the Middle East, whether that be in humanitarian aid and in fighting ISIS. It's 100% immoral to kick this family out of the country, knowing that we're bringing in tens of thousands of refugees just so Trudeau wave his arm and say, look what I did, feed his inflated ego. It's probably the grossest besides convicted terrorist Omar Khadr, a multi-millionaire that I've seen from this government, destroying a family's life like this, denying a disabled child like, and I rarely make requests, but I'm going to ask you for your help. Some government needs to remember to work for us. So I want you to leave a polite message, and I stress the word light here for the Minister of Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship, Ahmed Hassan. Tell him it's un-Canadian and doesn't represent you. He needs to do better others because the only family this is happening to. You can reach the minister at 639-1060, or you can email him at ahmedhassan@parle.g.ca. If anything, we make him respond to this atrocity, let families like the Workentons, and get him to reconsider this terrible, inhumane, and detrimental decision. For the Rebel.media, I'm Holly Nicholas. Thanks so much for watching, and thank you even more for writing.
I know that a lot of this really doesn't matter to most of you all, but I mean, Canada's really not that far away, and there's a few people in Canada that listens to the show, so yeah, I kind of find it, you know, kind of important. Not that I'm any kind of ignorance or anything like that. I'm just a man that claims to be a really when in reality they were a bird suicide and go to heaven and get X number of virgins for their good deed here on earth, killing us infidels, you know. Yeah, whatever. As long as they don't start pouring into the U.S. again, I guess. But I mean, you think about it. They're pouring into Canada, and if they can get to Canada, they can cross the border. No doubt. This article here is from The Guardian. Turmoil fuels schism between Trump's White House and Republican Party. Legislative agenda appears stalled, and after purged of establishment Republicans from White House staff, many in GOP are becoming more open in their criticism. Donald Trump's presidency was the weekend facing fresh turmoil after a week of unadulterated disasters from culminated in the removal of the chief of staff, with the legislative agenda stalled and his White House descending into civil war. Trump appeared to be losing support in a Republican Party that had previously rallied around him. Senior Republican in Congress scolded the president over his threat to fire the Attorney General Jeff Sessions and voted in favor of tougher sanctions on Russia, thwarting Trump's attempts to seek warmer relations with Vladimir Putin. The president was also under siege over his abrupt Twitter announcement that transgender people would be banned from the military, and his widely unscripted remarks in set-piece speeches, one of which appeared to endorse police brutality. Commentators said the past week was the worst endured by any U.S. president in living memory, and warned that as Trump becomes increasingly isolated and volatile, the situation could rapidly deteriorate, especially if he is tested by an international crisis. Charlie Sykes, a conservative author and broadcaster, said, quote, "You have a White House in meltdown because the event is a panoramic. Frustrated," end quote, frustrated by the beer in the Senate, Trump Saturday used Twitter to a change in rules that would make it easier for the majority party to pass legislation. Quote, "Republican must vote," end quote. It's killing the Republican Party. Allows to the country 200 bills in the Senate. Joke. End quote. And then he went on to say, quote, "If the Senate Democrats ever got the chance, they would switch to a 51 majority vote, and they are laughing at Republicans. Make change." End quote. Trump has mused about Senate procedure before, returning to the issue whenever particularly frustrated with Congress, and in doing so demonstrating a shaky understanding of how the upper chamber works. The Republican health care failed because the party could not muster 50 votes from within its own 52-strong group using a special budget process called reconciliation that avoids the 60 votes. A day later, in a major shakeup, Trump released Reince Priebus for only 6 months as chief of staff and stopped the Homeland Secretary Kelly, a Marine Corps four-star with experience in civilian government legislation. Trump announced the move in a week after he communicated director and Scaramucci accused Priebus of leaking information to reporters in a vulgar tirade that made Republican stalwart wince. The brash Scaramucci called the chief of staff, quote, a effing paranoid schizophrenic, end quote. Trump, a former Democrat, styled himself as an outsider when taking on the Republican establishment during the party's primaries. When he pulled off a shock victory, many were reluctant to embrace him, but did so out of it still said most would secretly prefer the Vice President Mike Pence to be in charge, but Priebus, whose 189-day tenure was the shortest in modern history for a White House Chief of Staff, followed Deputy Chief of Staff Katie Walsh, Communications Director Mike Dubke, Press Secretary Sean Spicer, and Press Aide Michael Short in being asked to resign. One by one, Trump's links with the party establishment is becoming severed. While the establishment is in retreat, Trump's inner circle is dominated by two constituencies: nationalists such as Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller, and New Yorker and Democratic leaning including Jared Kushner, Gary Cohn, Dina Powell, and Scaramucci. Trump's allies had long been critical for Priebus for bringing Republican insiders to the White House and overlooking those who helped him get elected. Trump himself is said to have regarded Priebus as weak and have publicly demeaned him. The Washington Post reported, quote, at one point during a meeting in the Oval Office, I began overhead distracting the president. The fly continued to circle Trump, summoned his chief of staff, and tasked him to sect, according to someone familiar with the incident. The paper added, quote, the West Wing has a regular fly problem, end quote. Despite the deep Republican concern, Priebus could not weigh in significantly to get the party to repeal and replace Barack Obama's health care law. The dismissal failure may encourage Trump to revert to his old self as a non-politician railing against the Washington status quo. The president said in a speech to police officers in Long Island, New York on Friday, quote, they should not have approved health care last night, but you can have everything. Oh boy, they've been working on that one for 7 years. Can you believe that? The swamp. But we'll get it done. We're going to get it done, end quote. Feeling the blame appeared mutual. The website Axios reported, quote, heard at House Republican conference meeting yesterday morning, this was the reaction of the health care bill. Lots of Senate blaming, lots of McCain blaming, but a surprising number of members standing at the mic in conference blasting Trump. One called him an embarrassment.
For me, I've never been a journalist, but I have played a journalist on television. You know, I used to host Wall Street Week for Fox Business. I sort of don't like the fake news, and if you said to me that there's some media bias out there, you want me to be as candid as I would like to be with you guys, there feels like there's a little bit of media bias.
A little bit, not too much, you know, not a lot. You know. Nothing to be alarmed about.
And I also went to law school with Methods.
It's great to see you.
Back in the day.
You've done very well.
I represent the community. We have felt about maybe whacking us with a stick. We feel like we've been whacked. Bring it.
All right, so why is he ready?
Dude from Queens County, bring it, Donald. So I'm very brief. I'm going to make remarks informal, and then I'll take questions from everybody. First off, I'd like to announce. I don't have any friction with Sean. I don't have any friction with Reince. This is the White House, the United States of America, and we're serving the president. Reince and I have been personal friends for 6 years. Others, where we rough each other, which is really normal.
As you from the Italian expression, the fish tank down. But I can tell you two fish that don't. Okay, and that's me and the president.
Thank you.
The White House press secretary, Sarah Sanders, said she did not think Priebus's departure would affect the White House relations with the Republican Party. Quote, I think we've got a pretty good relationship. We're going to continue working with the party and doing what we came here to do, end quote. Trump has no legislative achievements for his first 6 months in office. His chances of introducing tax and infrastructure reform look increasingly precarious. The president is also increasingly threatened by the investigation headed by former FBI Director Robert Mueller into links between the administration and Russia, and he faces a string of crises on the international front, from North Korea's increasingly active nuclear missile program to growing tensions with Iran. The focus on the president's relationship with Moscow rumbles on, Trump insisting on Saturday that Russia had never wanted him to become president, citing a news report claiming that a hostile rescue firm which produced a salacious dossier about Trump called out other work commissioned by Russia. Trump tweeted, quote, in other words, Russia was against Trump in the 2016 election, and why not? I want strong military and low oil prices, period. Witch hunt, exclamation mark, end quote. On Friday, The White House said that Trump would, however, sign a bill passed by Congress tightening sanctions on Russia. The Kremlin has demanded the closure of American properties in Russia, announced action against U.S. diplomatic personnel. And that's the end of that article. That's all the articles I've rounded up this morning. I had a couple more other days, but I must have not saved them like I thought I did. So, been able to find them. I was looking this morning, but I could not find them. Find out some more about this morning. If anything about CERN hits a particle accelerator in Switzerland. May Day, which is linked to Access Monday. It's like a schedule. It's like a weekly, daily schedule of heaven, I guess. There's a lot of Jewish mysticists and Kabbalists who believe in Access Monday. But anyway, on May the 8th, they fired up their newest collider accelerator. And, it's a linear accelerator called Awake. They then conjoined the two. The first one being 30 meters long, and the second one being 27 meters. Both particle accelerators together gives them 1,000 times the increased force from the particles colliding. They're targeting the north area of the center point of the main ring of the mountain. They're then to introduce the DNA of Osiris/Nimrod. Some y'all may remember the big archaeological find between the Great Pyramid of Giza. Hang on. Hold on, I'll show you. Y'all don't know or Osiris was the guy in the Bible had led the building Tower of Babel, which was a stairway, gateway, or portal. As you may or may not know, God did not agree with this, and God came down and separated the land and confounded the language.
Gilgamesh, or Nimrod, who built the Tower of Babel. His tomb was found in Iraq in 2003, and his giant skeleton and retrieved. Archaeologists in Iraq believe they found the lost tomb of King Gilgamesh, the subject of the oldest book in history, the Epic of Gilgamesh, written by Middle Eastern scholars 2,500 years before Christ, commemorating the life of the ruler of the city of Uruk, from which Iraq gets its name. Gilgamesh, also known as Nimrod. Now a German-led expedition discovered what is thought to be the entire city of the Euphrates, last resting place of its famous king, Gilgamesh. John Fassenberg of the Bavarian Department of Historical Monuments. I don't want to say definitely it was the grave of King Gilgamesh, but it looks very described. The book actually is in tablet.
Wow.
Gilgamesh described barely the Euphrates. Apparently, when the water of the ancient river parted following his death. Fassbinder said, "We found just outside the city, an area near the Euphrates River, the remains of such a building could be interpreted as burial." Amazing discovery of the ancient city under the Iraqi desert had been made possible by modern technology. He adds, by differences in magnetization in the soil, you can look into the ground. The difference between mud bricks and sediments in the Euphrates River gives a very detailed. This creates a magnetogram, which is then digitally mapped, effectively giving a town plan of Uruk. It was a Venice in the desert. The most surprising thing was that we found structures already described by Gilgamesh. We covered hectares, found garden structures depicted in the epic, and we found a Babylonian house. He also said the most astonishing incredibly system of, adding, very clearly we can see the canals, some structures showing that flooding destroyed some houses, which means it was a highly developed system. So why is it so interesting that his tomb has been found? It's interesting considering that Gilgamesh was believed to be part human, part alien, part angel. He was Nephilim, Anunnaki, Nephilim, fallen angels, the offspring of the fallen angels, as in Genesis 6, notably what we could call a hybrid. It's also interesting to note that Gilgamesh has been compared to and could very well be King Nimrod, who was the son of Cush and a descendant of Noah and the king of Babylon. The same Nimrod that built the Tower of Babel, translated as the gateway to heaven, to defy God. And we mentioned this regarding the overwhelming amount of information that has come to light recently of DNA genetic manipulation and its use in science and technology even today. Was the Iraq invasion a forward smokescreen for the enablement of Western powers to gain ancient alien technologies and possible DNA for future engineering and a possible resurrection and cloning of a DNA angel,
Yep.
Gilgamesh Nimrod?
Yep.
There are those who believe that that is so. There are those who believe that there was a driving force behind the resurrection of Nimrod, Gilgamesh. That was the primary reason for the East events. 1 month after archaeologists digging in her desert sands claimed to have found the tomb of Gilgamesh, just 4 years after the secret chambers of Osiris's empty tomb were found in Egypt. Behold, I have told you before, wherefore, if this shall say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not. For as the lightning come out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Matthew 24:25-28. In a recent interview on Omega Man Radio, Tom Horn and Steve Quayle talked about the discovery of that carcass of course, Gilgamesh,
You see this statue?
Nimrod,
You see this statue right here, guys? Okay, this is Nimrod. And this thing right here that he's holding ain't no kitten. It's a lion. If that tells you anything about who or what Nimrod was.
and they began talking about how Nimrod began to become a giant. Then they started talking about the discovery of Gilgamesh's remains, and Steve Quayle said, I talked to Special Operations General who validated that, verified that, and absolutely was there when Gilgamesh's remains, and his words were, he was in a state of remarkable preservation. And by the way, that was in the literal vicinity of where the United States built its largest military complex. I believe it's one of the largest military complexes in the world. In that whole area, the advanced team special operations went in there to have all that stuff. What I'm telling you is multi generals report me who was there that Gilgamesh's remains. So if they have Gilgamesh and he is Nimrod, we got it is to extract the DNA. And I've also been told the whole point of the Human Genome Project is to locate specific markers for the disembodied spirits to reanimate O's body that's brought back. So this is in fact Babylon Rising, the return of the Nephilim. And Steve Quayle goes on to say that he believes that this is indeed the real reason of remaining in Iraq for the better part of the last decade. The fact that U.S. troops are now coming back out of Babylon tells us that they have accomplished whatever it is they needed to do, which makes us wonder what or who else may be coming out of Babylon with them. I'll leave a link below for you for these articles.
Okay, so they tried to defy God by building the Tower of Babel. They were going to take over heaven and kill God. But as you know, may have read in the Bible, God sent his angels down and they put a stop to it, and they confounded, like back then, this was before Noah, this was thousands of years before Noah, I guess. Like back then, the earth, all continents were connected. It was on that Pangea thing, whatever they call it, the supercontinent. And that was when God sent his angels down and they confounded the languages into 6 different languages. And all of a sudden, everybody starts speaking a different language. Everybody knows Nimrod by a different name after this. He's known as Nimrod, Gilgamesh, Osiris, I don't know, a bunch of different names. Anyways, later on, I don't know what happened between then and this, but his brother was the great hunter. I forget his name. But he killed Nimrod with a mortal head wound. He cut his head off. And then he cut his body up in 13. Okay. He then comes home and tells his father that he could have all of his inheritance, just give him a bowl of beans or something like that. Let me see if I can find the exact quote. I thought it would have been it, but it's not. Well, anyways, he tells his dad that he didn't want his inheritance or something like that. All he wanted was a bowl of beans. Okay, so here's the book of Jasher. I don't know if it's in here or what. I don't think so, because it's already talking about Noah. But anyways, Isis comes along, and she finds out about Nimrod's death, and so she goes out into the wilderness, and she gathers up all of his body parts. Remember I told you that his brother cut him into 13 pieces? Well, she takes those 13 pieces and puts them back together. Or, no, she takes 12 of the 13 pieces and puts them back together. And she, wraps him up in the cloth, whatever, makes him into a mummy. And all but that one part that makes a man. And so this is where the comes from in the court. This is where the whatever that thing is, Washington Monument is, it's obulus, is it? Yes, an obulus. That's where the obulus comes from too. It's a symbol of the 13th part. And the most famous obulus, at least in the country, I guess. You can see how that can symbolize the male organ, I guess. Hope you can. That's what they're doing with CERN. They're trying to resurrect these Nephilim, and not only that, I just thought I'd give you a little reminder. February the 23rd of 2017, the famous Revelation 12 prophecy will be fulfilled. And if y'all know anything about it. It's about the story about the woman who was heavy with child and ready to give birth, and the dragon. It's pretty interesting. I'll let y'all watch a little bit about it. But this is a common 6,000-year-old prophecy, and it will soon be filled within, I don't know, a month and a half maybe.
The great sign in heaven, Revelation chapter 12, verse 1. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun under her feet, stars, and she cried out, labor and earth. Jesus offense fights from heaven. Sign from heaven, signed a prophetic. We are in Jerusalem. It's September 2017. First constellation in the rising above the horizon. Leo, constellation of royal line. The dawn that Leo is a crown of tea by the Virgin forms the appropriate crown for her because she is of the house of David, the lion of the tribe of Judah. Secondly, is the high lineage of the Virgin is of the lineage of the high of the seed of Adam, and her baby is the second Adam, Savior of the world. On this fateful day, she is clothed in the sun, is at her floods the sky. Since the Virgin clothed in the sun cannot see her, so we turn her artwork. But the prophet states that the great sign is to appear in heaven. High noon approaches, and on this special day, the sun turns as black as sackcloth, and the stars quickly fill the sky. Just like the crucifixion, it will remain dark for incredible 3 hours. We stop the motion and zoom in. Fill the screen with our 2 constellations. To better see how the constellations are formed, we generate blue light between their surfaces. Then we turn the constellation.
I think this here is Jupiter, I'm not for sure.
Leaving us with the lines of each constellation. Turn our attention to the constellation of Leo. In Leo, the alpha or star is the regal star. 8 additional used to but this leaves us stars short of the stars on the Virgin. On this day, 3 stars are in formation within the breeze of Leo.
Mercury,
Here, Venus, Mars, and Mercury. This gives us the prophesied 12 stars in the crown. Now we move to Virgo. Her left hip is formed by the alpha star named Spica, means the seed. The hip is formed by the zeta star, Nes, which means the branch. On the day, the Virgin is birthed to the king planet and these 2 stars. Like all the planets, Jupiter, which images the Messiah, was misnamed and misdescribed by us. The king rescuing Messiah. Because of this planet's creation takes countless for us that cross into them. Also, the planet has just months in the belly of the Virgin, reinforcing the prophetic imagery. To illustrate this wonder, we will now run the clock backward for a year. Notice that the king planet stops and turns around twice in retrograde motion while in the belly of the Virgin.
Cool.
In turn, the moon flies by on the ecliptic every month. This will give scenes to mark the beginning of the months. Up or backward motion. Now change motion. Notice the motion as Jupiter in the belly of the now times that flies by a virgin's belly. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And in just 10 months, we arrive back at our fateful day, September 3rd, 27. Now we will read the prophetic imagery in the great sign. Virgo, the Virgin Princess, imaging the Virgin Mary. Second, the Virgin clothed in the sun, life-giving God. Third, the moon is at her feet, heralding the as the Jewish feast of trumpets. On this, the Virgin also of 12 stars, representing the lineage of the high throne nation of Israel. Fifth, the Virgin gives birth to the Crown Prince, the Messiah. Sixth, the Crown Prince just spent a long 9 months in her womb, the human. Seventh, we can see this one, a special heavenly event causes society to fall 3 hours in the middle of the day. The combination of all 7 of these independent into a great sign brings to life the exact imagery of the prophecy. However, if this sign were to occur repeatedly in the course of the travels of the planets, then it is interpreted as a significant event. How often does this configuration occur in the heavens? The answer, it occurs only this one time. At no other time is the Virgin clothed in the sun, with the moon at her feet, while she is wearing a crown of 12 stars at the same time she gives birth. We have found no astronomy program that shows this configuration occurring at any other time throughout history, from the days of Adam, 6,000 years in the past, until the end of the reign in our future. Yet this was in Revelation chapter 12, 2,000 ago. The astounding of this great body is like a God's trumpet. It is a magnificent herald of end times events. Furthermore, the exact day plan he laid out before he created the heavens. This means the great anything less than a miraculous herald of prophetic war. The imagery does not end with the first 2 verses we just read in 12. On this day, a carrying the rosary. This comment bodes for the moon of Islam. At noon, the foot of the Virgin is on the other. The moon will be under the Virgin's feet. This day, 27, unique for other reasons of the Feast of Trumpet, one of the 7 of the Lord. The 7 feasts are prophetic of the 7 most significant events in redemptive history. Jesus was crucified on the first spring feast. This is the day of the first fall feast. In turn, this day on this unique year is also on the weekly 7th-day Sabbath. Finally, it is also the day of the fall equinox. Incredibly, all of these date markers in the heavens are occurring the same day on the Lord's the day is at 3 in the afternoon. The eclipse will be over. The sun reappears and shines for 3 hours before it sets. At this point, wonder comes there. The only block the hours carry large rings of iron. Rings go much. Earth must pass form of higher. It is of which is and 1/3 of kind. In 10 hour, the Lord told that not one person who call on his name is lost. The shouting terror begins. Children will be safe from firestorms of the Earth's rotation. On contrast, unmitigated disaster falls upon the Western world, and the Lord will cause his voice of authority to be heard, and the striking of his arm will be seen in the indignation of his fierce anger, and a flame of consuming fire, in driving rain, a torrent, and hailstones. When he opened the 6th seal, I looked, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth made of hair. The whole moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth as the fig sheds its unripe fruit when shaken by a storm. Have you entered the storehouses of the snow, or have you seen the armory of the hail, which I have reserved for the time of tribulation, for the day of war and battle? With pestilence and with blood I will enter into judgment with Gog, and I will rain on him and on his troops, and on the many peoples who are with him a torrential rain, with hailstones, fire, and brimstone. Apocalyptic scripture reveals catastrophic events. These catastrophic events are designed by God to facilitate important changes he is making in his administration of both heaven and earth. These changes include momentous governmental transformation that carries us from one age to another, from one dispensation to another. Very soon you are going to experience this incredibly intense journey. Apocalyptic events are so extreme they will have deep emotional effects, shaking all mankind to the core. One of God's great purposes for apocalyptic scripture is to shake us into realizing that our situation is serious and that we must take action before these events arrive in order to guard our souls and the souls of all those we love. Dawn in the shadow of Congress. It is the day of the great sign. Forerunners of the firestorm of the Golden Empire streak the sky. The end is within hours. The great sign in heaven heralds the world's entrance into end times troubles. God's grace is manifested in this sign. It has been created to warn us, flee from the wrath to come. The day of the anger of the Lamb is approaching, for the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? The only way for you to flee is to flee to the Lord. The wise men have the eyes to see. The prophetic was upon them. They then acted on what they saw. To see that the great sign from heaven, a prophetic day, is upon you. The star of history was a herald of news. In contrast, God is going to use the large history to herald terrifying news. The first herald was shouts of great joy. This herald will call forth shouts of great terror. The great sign is so significant that three forerunners are the way for its appearance. The blood moon famous comet carrying the Rosetta probe, and the great American eclipse of 2017. Midway between the blood moons of 2014, the Caliphate of Islam was reborn. This event constitutes of the little horn, the eighth prophetic king described in Revelation chapter 17. It will become the empire of the beast. The great comet carrying the Rosetta probe passed into the constellations of the great sign on the very day of the fourth blood moon, stitching together end times signs. In the great sign for 2 years, and be beside the moon when the great sign appears, boding disaster for Allah and his new caliphate. The great American eclipse of August 21st, 2017. This solar eclipse sweeps around half the earth, but brings darkness to only land. The United States' final heads-up call to awaken. Cataclysmic judgment is only 33 days away. The American firestorm will arrive 30 the great American eclipse of 27. God's purpose, sights, and great signs from heaven is to bring many people who would not have done so otherwise to call upon the name of the Lord. For the same Lord over all is rich to call upon him. For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. God has configurations among the stars as signs. They are sign events of the earth. It's heralding notice before the eyes of the winds foretold how means the great heaven to function, leading great of the Lord is accountable to warn all who are innocent. Wonder in his warning to all. The time of judgment here. This judge is written book. The judgment is just. This means the Lord cannot be charged with any wrong against man or angel for the judgment he is bringing upon the world. You are served notice. The Lord's events are about to overtake you. The great sign of heaven is the herald proclaims of the last days have arrived. Most of us refuse to believe God's by faith. We will believe through a sign. So God is going a great sign. This great sign is sudden and great judgment. But why? The rebels of the Golden Empire attacked purity. The attack on purity is because the lawmakers will have holiness to rule over them. But to reject God's holiness is to reject God himself. The rebels' forces them war on God. As rebels feel bold enough to open war in defiance, they reach out and court officers that are walking in holiness. At this point, of Sodom and the judgment of Sodom will be poured out on the spirit of Sodom. The Lord begins moving into place as storehouse the day of battle. Like little David needs his the day of battle arrives. It is the day of fights and great signs from heaven. The Lord takes aim and the golden globe suddenly falls. The empire will die in 1 hour, unrepentant in its wickedness. The unrepentant empire and the church in the unrepentant empire have together refused to confess the empire's fatal sin. What is this fatal sin that brings such sudden judgment? Our fatal sin is the replacement of holiness with human rights as our guiding moral principle in life and government. This is in direct opposition to the Lord's decree, "You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy." The manifest insanity of pornographic rights, abortion rights, and homosexual rights is the diseased fruit of the doctrine of human rights. This is why evil has become good and good has become evil in our land. The unrepentant adherence to the doctrine of human rights that is producing the trampling of the holiness of God in our courts is the guarantee of the firestorm of the Golden Empire. Your only hope will be to turn to the Lord Jesus Christ. Jesus himself, as as I unless one is born cannot see the kingdom of God. In the same situation with Nicodemus, Jesus also said, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life." Call on his name with all your heart. Please do not risk 1 day's wait. Everyone, pray out loud with me, even if you're already born again. Decide now and say this prayer. Jesus, I cry out to you. I admit I am a sinner, fallen and under your judgment. In confusion, I've replaced your holiness with man's counterfeit. I want to be born again and to see rightly. Rescue me from your firestorm and send your Holy Spirit to dwell in me. Amen. Now try out your spiritual eyes. Find a Bible and read the Gospel of John. It is the 4th book in the New Testament.
But yeah, that's a little something that's coming up here in less than about a month and a half, folks. We need to get right with the Lord. We need to tell everybody we know about this. We need to spread the word. We need to pray. But that's it for today's show. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I hope I got through to